To the world, Jerry Reed was the guitar man. He was that fast-talking, charismatic, good old boy who could pick a guitar faster than a speeding bullet and charm his way out of any jam, both on screen and off. His laugh was a force of nature, his grin was a mile wide, and his life looked like one long, happy song. But behind that larger-than-life persona, a war was being fought. A slow, silent thief was stealing his breath, a ghost born from a lifelong habit he just couldn't shake. The tapes of his life, from the hit records to the blockbuster movies, they captured the legend, but they missed the full story. The official story says Jerry Reed's life ended because of a disease. The truth, however, is more complicated. It's the story of a man whose body was giving out, while his spirit stubbornly refused to quit. And the most haunting message he ever left wasn't spoken into a microphone in his final hours. It was broadcast across his entire career, a secret hiding in plain sight. What was really caught on tape was the slow, tragic dimming of one of country music's brightest stars, and the hell of a fight he put up until the very end. Before we can get to the end of Jerry Reed's story, you have to understand the legend he built. Born Jerry Reed Hubbard in Atlanta, Georgia, his beginnings were anything but glamorous. His parents split shortly after he was born, and he and his sister spent the next 7 years bouncing between foster homes and orphanages. It was a tough start. But in the middle of all that chaos, he found a friend that would define his life. When he was just 7, his mother bought him a second-hand guitar for $7 and showed him his first chord. In that moment, a universe of possibility cracked open. That small wooden box became his voice, his escape, and his destiny. He famously said as a small kid, "I am gonna be a star. I'm gonna go to Nashville and be a star." He wasn't wrong. By the time he was a teenager, the guy was a prodigy, dropping out of high school to tour with country royalty like Ernest Tubb and Farron Young. He snagged his first record deal at 17, but real stardom was a slow burn. He moved to Nashville, not as a star, but as just another hopeful, a gifted picker in a town overflowing with them. He first made his mark as a songwriter, the guy who could pen a hit for somebody else. Gene Vincent had a hit with Reed's song, "Crazy Legs." Country giants like Porter Wagoner and Johnny Cash were recording his tunes, but it was the king himself, Elvis Presley, who would launch Jerry Reed from a respected Nashville player to a household name. In 1967, Reed released his own semi-autobiographical song, "Guitar Man." It did okay on the charts, but then Elvis heard it. Presley was in a Nashville studio and wanted to record the song, but his session players just couldn't nail Reed's unique, funky, syncopated style. Frustrated, Elvis's producer called Reed directly. As Reed loved to tell the story, he told the producer, "Well, if you want it to sound like that, you're going to have to get me in there to play guitar, because these guys are straight pickers. I pick with my fingers and tune that guitar up all weird kind of ways." When he got the call, he famously claimed he made it to the studio in 2 minutes, even though he was 18 miles away. He walked into that legendary session, hit that unforgettable opening lick, and watched Elvis's face light up. That session didn't just give Elvis a hit, it gave Jerry Reed a new identity. From that day on, he was the guitar man. Presley was so blown away, he also recorded another Reed song that day, "U.S. Mail." That collaboration was a rocket ship. Soon, Jerry Reed wasn't just the guy playing the guitar. He was the man on the front of the album cover, his own. Hits started coming, each one showing off another side of his massive talent. You had the swampy, funky storytelling of Amos Moses, a crossover hit that broke into the top 10 on the pop charts. You had the Grammy-winning, fast-talking anthem, "When You're Hot," which was his cocky but charming personality boiled down into a song. And then, of course, there was the unforgettable trucker anthem, "Eastbound and Down," the theme song to a movie that would make him a global superstar. That movie was Smokey and the Bandit, cast as Cletus, the Snowman Snow, the loyal, long-suffering sidekick to Burt Reynolds' magnetic Bandit, Reed became one half of one of the most iconic duos in movie history. The chemistry between Reed and Reynolds wasn't acting. It was a real friendship that you could feel through the screen. They had met on the set of WW and the Dixie Dance Kings a few years earlier and hit it off immediately. Reynolds saw something special in Reed, not just a musician, but a natural-born entertainer. Their banter felt real because it was. Burt Reynolds even gifted Jerry a black 1980 Trans Am, just like the movie car, a symbol of their friendship. For a whole generation, Jerry Reed was the Snowman. He was the good old boy with a heart of gold, a basset hound named Fred, and a big rig he could drive like a sports car. The movie was a monster success and turned him from a country star into a bona fide movie star. But this is where the central puzzle of Jerry Reed's life really comes into focus. While Hollywood saw a charismatic actor and audiences saw a lovable hero, the music world knew the truth. Behind that grin was one of the most innovative and influential guitar players of the 20th century. His style, nicknamed the Claw, for how his hand looked when he played, was a revolutionary mashup. He blended the finger-picking of his heroes like Merle Travis and Chet Atkins with banjo rolls, bluesy licks, and a funky rhythm that was all his own. It was so complex, it sounded like he was playing lead, rhythm, and bass all at the same time. The legendary Chet Atkins, who produced many of Reed's records and won 2 Grammys with him for their duet albums, often said that Reed was a better fingerstyle player than he was. In the world of country guitar, that's about the highest praise you can get. Players from Eric Johnson to Tommy Emmanuel have pointed to Reed as a huge influence, a guitarist whose technical genius was often hiding in plain sight, masked by his own popular success and down-home personality. He was a Grammy winner, a respected songwriter, a sought-after session man, a beloved actor, and a TV personality. By any measure, Jerry Reed had made it. He was the star he promised. Himself he'd be as a kid. The tapes were rolling, capturing hit after hit, movie after movie. But as the years rolled on, another darker story was unfolding off camera, one that would lead to a slow, heartbreaking final act. For a man who made his living with his voice and his breath, the irony was just cruel. Jerry Reed was a heavy smoker. For years, a habit he picked up in an era before anyone really understood the dangers. It was a habit he found almost impossible to quit. In 1972, right at the peak of his fame, he released a song called Another Puff. Set to his signature, deceptively happy-sounding rhythm, the song is a darkly funny monologue about a guy who knows he should quit smoking, but keeps finding one more excuse to light up. He sings about his battle plan, the money he's wasting, his body screaming for nicotine, all before landing on the punchline. With that little bit of assurance, I believe I'll have another puff. The song was a hit, but it was also a confession. It was a public admission of a private struggle, played for laughs. Decades later in the 1990s, long after he'd finally quit, he even filmed a PSA-style video for the song, acting out the whole struggle. But by then, the damage was done. All those years of smoking led to a diagnosis that would define the final chapter of his life: emphysema. Emphysema is a relentless disease. It slowly destroys the air sacs in your lungs, making it harder and harder to simply breathe. For a singer, it's a devastating blow. For a man whose entire public image was built on non-stop energy and a fast-talking, breathless delivery, it felt like a particularly twisted joke. As the 80s and 90s went on, the disease started to take its toll. He kept touring and performing, but the schedules got lighter. He still showed up in films, with his last major role being the hilarious villain Coach Red Beaulieu in the 1998 Adam Sandler movie The Waterboy. That role introduced him to a whole new generation, but it was a physically demanding part that hinted at the decline that was coming. In June of 1999, he underwent quadruple bypass surgery, another major health battle that highlighted his growing fragility. The larger-than-life snowman was quietly facing his own mortality. Those closest to him saw the change. The boundless energy started to fade. His public appearances became rarer. The man who once seemed to be everywhere, on your radio, your TV, your movie screen, slowly began to step back from the spotlight. The mystery of Jerry Reed's final years isn't some hidden scandal. It's the shocking contrast between the vibrant, energetic man we all saw on film and the quiet, difficult reality of his private life. How does a man known for his voice cope when his own breath becomes his enemy? How does the guitar man deal with a body that can no longer keep up with his spirit? His longtime booking agent, Carrie Moore Reed, said that he kept recording right up until he physically couldn't anymore. It was a testament to his unbreakable will. Music wasn't a job. For Jerry Reed, it was his lifeblood. When someone asked him which part of his career he liked best, songwriter, guitarist, or entertainer, he shot back, "Hey, that's like trying to pick out your favorite leg." He told an interviewer, "There's nothing on earth as powerful as music, period." I mean, it's pretty hard to fight and hate and be angry when you're making music, isn't it? So he fought. He fought the disease that was trying to silence him. He kept writing and playing, even when it became a painful struggle. As his health got worse, his focus began to shift. He reportedly dove into spiritual studies and dedicated his time to raising awareness for veterans' issues, looking for a new kind of purpose as his performing career wound down. By the late 2000s, the decline was clear. He was living quietly outside Nashville with his wife of nearly 50 years, singer Priscilla Mitchell. She had been by his side since before the fame, the hits, and the movies. They married in 1959, and she was the anchor in his whirlwind life. Together they raised 2 daughters, Sadina and Lottie, creating a private sanctuary he could retreat to as his public life faded. In late August of 2008, the fight was almost over. The emphysema had gotten so bad that he was placed in hospice care. That's the stage of medical care that isn't about finding a cure, but about providing comfort in a person's final days. The decision to enter hospice is a profound one. It's an admission that the battle is over, and it's time for peace. For a man who lived his life at 100 miles an hour, this final slowdown must have been the hardest part of all. The world had the tapes of Eastbound and Down, but the reality was a man slowing to his final stop. September 1st, 2008. The final day. Jerry Reed was in a hospice facility near his Nashville home. The air wasn't filled with the roar of a crowd anymore, but with the quiet hum of medical equipment and the soft voices of his family. He was surrounded by his wife, Priscilla, and his daughters. There is no public play-by-play account of Jerry's last 24 hours. His family, always private, kept those final sacred moments for themselves, as they should. He had made it clear he wanted a low-key funeral, a quiet exit with no fanfare, and they honored that wish. But based on what we know about his condition and hospice care, we can paint a picture of that last day. It was likely a day of quiet goodbyes, both spoken and unspoken. The man in that bed was a shadow of the swaggering star the world knew. Years of fighting for every single breath had taken a brutal physical toll. The final stages of emphysema are a profound struggle. The body is starved for oxygen, leading to incredible weakness. But while his body was failing, the essence of who he was, that spark, was still there. Those who knew him best talked about a man who never lost his sense of humor or his gratitude for the amazing life he'd led. In a 2005 interview, he looked back and said, "Every dream I ever dreamed came true in my life. I got to write hit songs, and I got to be on phonograph records. I'm a cotton mill boy, and I got to go to Hollywood. Can you imagine that? Why, yeah, my goodness gracious, go figure." It's easy to imagine that in his lucid moments on that final day, his mind wandered back to that $7 guitar, back to the cotton mills of Georgia, Back to the thrill of hearing his song on the radio for the very first time. Back to that electric moment in the studio with Elvis. The moment that changed everything. Maybe. He thought of his friend Burt Reynolds and the wild ride of the Smokey and the Bandit films. One of Burt's drivers recalled how the two of them would light up a room, saying, "Those two were something else." You could hear them cracking jokes and laughing all through the bus. Another friend said, "Burt always felt better when Jerry was around." Theirs was a friendship that defined an era built on genuine laughter and respect. He was surrounded by the legacy of that life, not just in memories, but in the family he had built with Priscilla. They were married for 49 years, a lifetime. In any world, let alone the wild world of show business, she was there for the whole ride, from struggling songwriter to movie star. She knew the man, not the legend. Their daughters, Sadina and Lottie, were there, proof of a life lived away from the cameras. When he was posthumously inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame in 2017, his daughters accepted the honor for him. Through tears, they said, "Thank you, CMA and Country Music Hall of Fame, for recognizing all the years of love, dedication, and hard work that Daddy put into his craft." He loved country music and would be so deeply humbled and appreciative if he was here. As that final day wore on, his body grew weaker. The end came quietly. On September 1st, 2008, Jerry Reed passed away from complications of emphysema. He was 71. There was no dramatic final scene. And forget any sensationalist stories about some newly discovered audio tape with a haunting last message. That's a fiction, invented to create a mystery where there is none. The truth is both simpler and much more powerful. The real last words of Jerry Reed weren't whispered into a recorder in his final hours. They were captured on tape over a lifetime. The most haunting message Jerry Reed ever recorded wasn't a secret. It was a hit song. Another puff is so much more than a novelty tune. Listening to it now, it's a chilling prophecy. It's the sound of a man laughing at the very thing that would one day kill him. The lyrics, "I've seen it and I've heard it so many times and finally it just started to prey on my mind," are a flat-out confession. And the jaunty, upbeat music playing under that dark admission is the perfect metaphor for his whole career, masking a serious, complex reality with a smile and a catchy tune. That song, Today, is a ghost. It's a message from a younger, healthier Jerry Reed to his future self, a warning he couldn't follow in time. That is the real message caught on tape. His last words to the world weren't spoken. They were played. They're in the lightning-fast, joyful notes of The Claw, a piece so iconic it's still a benchmark for guitarists today. They're in the swampy, funky groove of Amos Moses, a sound that blended country, blues, and rock in a way that was years ahead of its time. They are in that unmistakable opening riff of Guitar Man, the lick so perfect that the king of rock and roll himself said, "I have to have that." And his final message is also in his words, not just from his songs, but from his life. In one interview, he defiantly said, "There'll be no retirement for this cowboy. I want to work hard and play hard all the days of my life." That wasn't just talk. He lived it. He fought his illness to keep playing, to keep being Jerry Reed. The true testament to his final message is the legacy he left behind. He wrote songs that became standards for legends like Johnny Cash and Elvis. He created a guitar style so unique it has its own name. He brought a new level of joy and humor to country music, becoming an ambassador for the genre to a massive audience. CMT rightly called him a genuine original. The Guardian newspaper in the UK even said his influence on American guitar could be compared to the legendary Django Reinhardt. When he was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame in 2017, the tribute said it all. 3 guitar masters, Tommy, Emmanuel, John Knowles, and Steve Wariner, all holding the prestigious Certified Guitar Player title from Chet Atkins, had to team up just to perform The Claw. It took 3 of the world's best pickers to pay tribute to the work of one man. Jamie Johnson, such a devoted fan that one of his tour buses is wrapped in a Smokey and the Bandit graphic, performed Eastbound and Down. This is the final message. It's not a sad, whispered goodbye. It's a loud, joyful, and brilliant body of work that screams of a life lived to its absolute fullest. The haunting part is knowing what it cost him, knowing about the slow tragedy unfolding just off screen, the sound of a man literally playing and singing his heart out, even as he was running out of breath. The story of Jerry Reed's final 24 hours isn't a Hollywood mystery. It's a human one. It's the story of a larger-than-life personality grappling with the quiet, humbling reality of a terminal illness. On September 1, 2008, the music world didn't just lose a star. It lost a true original. Here was a man who could make you laugh with a song like "She Got the Gold Mine, I Got the Shaft," and then make your jaw drop with a guitar masterpiece seconds later. He was a beloved actor who became a cultural icon and a guitarist's guitarist, whose influence runs deep. The news of his death brought an outpouring of tributes. His friend and producer Chet Atkins had always been his biggest champion, but a whole new generation of musicians mourned his passing. He was remembered not just as a legend, but as a kind, hilarious man who loved life, loved people, and loved to make music. His daughter, Sadina Hubbard, said it best. "I want people to know that what they saw is what they got." He brought all of the beauty and happiness to the family. The tapes of Jerry Reed's life tell two stories. One is the official version, the bright lights, the hit songs, the blockbuster movies, the smiling superstar. The other is the story that plays between the lines, the story of a boy from an orphanage who dreamed of being a star, the story of a musical genius who hid his virtuosity behind a charming grin, and the story of a man who faced a devastating disease with the same courage he showed on screen. The greatest tragedy caught on tape is hearing the sheer power and breath control in his early songs, knowing that the very habit that fueled so many late-night writing sessions would ultimately steal that power away. But his legacy isn't one of tragedy. It's one of triumph. He was a cotton mill boy who went to Hollywood, a guitarist who changed the game, and an entertainer who brought joy to millions. And in the end, the only haunting message Jerry Reed left behind is the one that echoes in his music. A reminder to live loud, laugh hard, and play every note like it's your last.